All right. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. Uh, Reminder today is Pearl Harbor Day, 12/7. So don't forget, if you can check out an article or video or watch a movie if you want with Ben Affleck in, that'd be cool. So just remember Pearl Harbor Day, 12/7. Big event there. Big event. All right, so we just finished up with chapter 3, biopsychology, and we're moving on today to chapter 4, which is going to be sensation and perception, which is going to be a unique chapter. Usually, I do a lot of fun activities as well, like a taste test or a taste test, sight, things like that, and like movement and everything. But with COVID, it's going to be tough, and since you're remote, it's going to be tough. And we'll figure it out, though. We'll figure it out. So, real quick, let's start off the chapter. So, we just got done with the test. Those grades are in, should be all in for you. Again, no current events for this week just because it's just tough to do them right now. So, we'll wait till next week to assign current events. But real quick, let's go over sensation perception. I'll introduce the chapter, and that'll be it for today. Okay, we'll move on tomorrow with transduction and how our nerves, our neurons fire for us to sense and perceive certain images or sights, smells, touch, taste, you name it. Okay, you name it. All right, so real quick, let's move on. Sensation and perception. So the basics. All right, we do not actually experience the world directly, but we experience it through a series of filters we call senses, which I think is pretty interesting, right? We sense everything that we're around. So with our sight, okay, with our smell, our taste, touch, right? In many ways, we have a vestibular sense too, where we can where we can move and feel certain things and items, right? And I think that's interesting. Like our brain actually doesn't actually touch these things, right? We sense these where we can perceive what we're seeing, we're smelling, we're tasting, we're touching, and we can make sense of it in that light and that aspect. Okay. The study of the senses and their effect of their behavior is called sensory psychology. All right. So again, we make different references and we make sense of what we're seeing, what we're touching, what we're hearing, and we base it off pretty much memories, right? And our present and our past memories to see if we like certain objects, we see certain objects, if they look familiar, and we try to relate it to what how we experienced that sort of thing before. And that's an interesting topic which we're going to talk about this chapter. Okay. And we know with the hippocampus, right, how we're relating these certain objects, right, have past memories, and we're trying to make some sort of sense of it moving forward, how we can relate it to what we've experienced before. Like with a stoplight, the first time we came to it, we're like, oh man, here's a red light, we got to stop. And in some ways, I don't know what it is. I'm sure many of you have done the same thing. When I've come up to Cuppies, it was a green light, and I stopped. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm just used to stop signs, I guess. I don't know what it is, but whenever I see an intersection, I always stop, even though it's green. Sometimes I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got to keep going here, and hopefully that doesn't happen again. Where, and especially in a crowded place like Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, or Philly, where I'll get yelled at, cussed at, right? But senses, we're going to move on with that. Okay, we're going to talk about the olfactory bulb, right? The gustation. Okay, we already know with hearing, right, with that Wernicke's area, how we're trying to understand different information coming in, auditory senses, and we're trying to make sense of it in the temporal lobe. Vision, right, in the occipital. Okay, and then touch with the sensory cortex. Right, so we talked about these different parts of the brain, their functions, where they're located, and and how we can make sense of these certain things with memory and emotion. Okay. So sensation, process by which stimulator receptor, ears, eyes, you name it, creates a pattern of neural messages that represent the stimulus in the brain, giving rise to our initial experience of the stimulus. So we talked about sensory neurons, motor neurons, okay, and how they send information to and forth one another with synapses and neural transmitters. Okay, and that's all going to be used in order to process this information, how we sense this information, how it's sent to the brain to be processed, and how we react to these certain stimulus, right? Okay, with the motor neurons, the interneurons, the sensory neurons, and this is all used with our senses. Okay, how we make sense of certain objects or certain experiences. All right, so our senses. Notice that our sense organs are very much alike. Okay, we have transduction, which we'll talk about tomorrow, and how that information is being sent either through hearing, right, through our ear canal, which we're going to talk more in detail about in this chapter. Okay, with vision, how that's used within our brain and with the occipital lobe, how we perceive certain images, and how our actually brain flips these images upside down for us to make sense of it. Okay, and how our sight is being used and how we react to these certain images or certain senses of hearing, taste, touch, whatever it might be. So they all transform physical stimulations such as light waves, sound waves, into neural impulses, what give us sensations such as light and dark. Okay, although we sense these certain things, our brain actually perceives this in order for us to make sense of it and understand what we're looking at, what we're touching, what we're hearing, what we're smelling, okay, and how we familiarize it with our everyday actions and lifestyles and our interests, right? So perception, mental process that elaborates and assigns meaning in incoming patterns. So through transduction, this is sending neural impulses, neural messages to our brain, and our brain tries to perceive these images, perceives this transduction, right? These neural messages for us to understand. And this is a pretty cool illusion, right? With faces, right? We see the faces here, and then we see the vase. It's in how you perceive these sort of images and how we understand it. And perception is how we understand it, right? We might see a vase, or we might see two faces. All right. So a sensation and perception is essentially an interpretation and elaboration of sensation. Therefore, sensation refers to the initial steps in the processing of stimulus. This is a pretty cool picture. So take notice of this. Look at it. I'll post a PowerPoint up for you so you can check it out later as well, along with your vocab for this unit. So they look very similar until we flip it upside down. Oh my gosh, what is she? Oh, she looks like a demon or something. Exorcism, who knows? Right? So there you go. So with this picture, because our mind actually flips these images upside down for us, like on our mind on the occipital lobe, what we see, what we visualize, is actually projected on the back of our, in the back of our brain, our occipital lobe, as upside down. So our brain actually filters that information, okay, and flips it upside, right side up for us to understand. So actually, what we're visualizing is upside down in our brain, in our occipital lobe. But our brain, because it works at a simultaneous rate, as a quick, fast rate, we actually visualize that information upside, okay, right side up. Okay, we'll talk about that more when we get to visualization and how that happens. Right, but this picture is pretty interesting here. Right, so it looks like the same image. Obviously, when you study it more, you can understand and see the eyes and the mouth upside down. But when we flip it right side up, we can see that these two pictures are very different. Here's another one. This one's, I think, harder. So that famous Mona Lisa. That looks like she. Okay. So when you first glance at it, can't really see anything. They look very similar. When you study it, obviously more, you can pick out the differences. When we flip it right side up, oh man, looks like she has weird looking eyes, or she's looking at us in a stern way, and she has a frown, right? Her mouth flips upside down. So that's a pretty cool image, and how our brain kind of plays tricks on us and our senses. And these illusions try to pick on how our brain processes information and how very different it is, even though it's somewhat of an illusion, which is interesting. All right, so we're going to talk about transduction tomorrow and how our neurons send this information to our brain, okay, how we make sense of it, okay? And we'll get more into like the ear and the eye and taste, touch, smell, you name it, more in the upcoming chapter. So I'll post vocab for you. Again, the vocab's not due tomorrow, anytime this week. I'll let you know when that's due. But there you have it. There you go. That's it for today. Take care and have a good one. Remember, Pearl Harbor Day.